Right. Well, and we'll get started in just a minute. All right. So, hello, everybody. My name is Tara. My pronouns are they, she, and I am the National Media Chair for NeuroSci. Thank you for joining us on our first day of our grant recipient panel. I am joined by two amazing panelists, and we will jump into introducing them in just a second. So to get started, quick little rundown of our schedule. We'll go over the grant and award dates since our panelists here received an undergraduate research award. So I figured I might as well go through the dates of our upcoming awards. So if you are interested, then you can apply to those as well. We'll do a little introduction of our hosts and our panelists, and then we'll do a little Q&A, have a quick little refresh break, and then we'll open up our dialogue to our attendees. And feel free to put any questions in the chat, either on Zoom or on YouTube. We will be monitoring them, and no matter what, though, the questions will get answered. So to jump into our award and grant dates, our first one is coming up next week on Friday, or the following week on Friday, and that is our undergraduate research grant. And then in May, on that first Friday, our Outstanding Student Member of the Year, Outstanding Faculty Member of the Year, and Chapter of the Year award applications are due. Again, my name is Tara, and I am the National Media Chair. I was inducted into the Alpha in Arizona chapter at University of Arizona in 2016, and I have been with the National Council since 2017. So to get into our amazing panelists, our first panelist is Razine Thamachak. Thamachak? Okay. Razine Thamachak, and he is a senior at The Ohio State University, where he's anticipated to graduate in May 2025 with a BS in neuroscience on a pre-medical track. After graduating, he'll take a gap year to apply to medical school, work as a patient care nursing assistant, and attend a medical mission trip. Razine was awarded a NeuroSci 2024 undergraduate research grant for his project Age-Associated Neurobehavioral Deficits Following Brain Injury under the guidance of his current PI, Dr. Jonathan Godbout. The Godbout Lab studies neuroimmunology, neurotrauma, and behavior, and utilizes cryostat, high-powered fluorescent imaging, image analysis, immunohistochemistry, RNA isolation, and PCR techniques. He has previously researched with Dr. Timothy Pollock, studying gastrointestinal cancer surgery as part of the Cancer Control Program, and with Dr. Robert Stewart, studying cardiothoracic surgery as part of the Akron Children's Summer Pediatric Research Scholars Program. For his research, he has presented at numerous Ohio State University events, including the STEP Expo, the Denman Forum, Chronic Brain Injury Research Day, Neuroscience Research Forum, and the Spring Undergraduate Research Festival, and he has received the Undergraduate Research Apprenticeship Program Award. Rosine has a wide range of leadership experiences, including being the treasurer of the OSU Neurosci chapter, the networking director for OSU's Alpha Epsilon Delta Pre-Health Honor Society, a neuroscience ambassador, the lead honors peer mentor in the College of Arts and Sciences, and is a volunteer with the Hospice of Central Ohio, the American Red Cross, Akron Canton Regional Food Bank, Akron Children's Hospital, and Cleveland Clinic, Akron General. And he has previous presentations entitled Cooperzone induced demyelination causes formation of unique rod-shaped microglia, and does low-dose subtherapeutic heparin infusion prevent vascular thrombosis in patients with central venous line? And then for our second incredible panelist, we have Alex Jakubiak, who is a post-baccalaureate scholar obtaining his BS and BA in May 2024 from Wayne State University with majors in neuroscience and French and minors in chemistry, biochemistry, and psychology. Jakubiak is a research assistant in the Think Lab of Dr. Hilary Marazak, studying adolescent mental health topics such as air pollution, peer victimization, and cannabinoids. Within the lab, Alex uses personal air pollution monitors, EEG, startle behavior task, mental health questionnaires, and skin conductance. He was awarded the 2024 Andrew Mickley Undergraduate Research Grant for his project within the Think Lab, exploring the relationship between PM 2.5 exposure and functional connectivity in the salience network, implications for anxiety risk. In addition to the Think Lab, Jakubiak is also a research assistant in the Govand Lab under Dr. Navnath Govand, PhD, focusing on the organic synthesis of potential drug molecules for the treatment of cancer and SARS-CoV-2. For his research, he has presented at several conferences, including SOBP, the Michigan Society for Neuroscience, and Annual International Society for Neuroscience conferences, the WSU Warrior Scholars Conference, Chemistry Dow Undergraduate Conference, Chemistry Graduate Research Symposium, and WSU Graduate Research Symposium with posters entitled Exploring the Impact of Air Pollution on Youth Anxiety and Brain Connectivity Through Personal Air Monitoring, and Design and Development of SARS-CoV-2 Inhibitors by Targeting PL Protease. At the Warrior Scholars Conference, he was awarded the Warrior Scholar Conference Award. And during his undergraduate career, he was the academic director and part of the event coordination committee for WSU's Neurosci chapter, an organic chemistry peer mentor for 5 semesters, and the first post-bachelor's organic chemistry instructional assistant for the summer 2024 semester. He joined the Academic Honor Society for Phi Beta Kappa, is a Richard Barber Interdisciplinary Fellow, and tested into the highest undergraduate level of Middlebury College School of French Immersion Program. He anticipates applying to and attending graduate school to obtain his PhD in biochemistry with a particular interest in drug discovery. So thank you so much, Rosine and Alex, for being here with me today. Is there anything that you all would like to add to your introductions?
I just want to say that this is an amazing opportunity, so I really appreciate you and everyone else just taking the time to listen to both me and Alex, and I'm really looking forward to it.
And I'll reciprocate Rosine's comments about appreciating the chance to be here. I'm so honored to be here, and it's great to have the chance to talk to you all. And honestly, I'm an open book. Anything you guys want to know about classes, career changes, grant writings, anything at all, I'm an open book. I'm happy to help however I can.
Thanks. Cool. All right, so let's just jump into the questions. So before we kind of get too much into what led you to research, I want to know what got you initially interested in neuroscience and what made you choose your neuroscience programs at Ohio State and Wayne State.
Yeah, so I when I was in high school, I took, chemistry, biology, psychology, kind of like the typical like science classes. And coming into Ohio State, I'm the only one in my family to go to college, so I didn't really have an idea of like what to major in. I knew I wanted to be a doctor, I wanted to be pre-med, but I wasn't necessarily sure like what I should major in. Like now I know it doesn't matter, but back then I didn't. And I was kind of just like looking through like the majors at Ohio State, and since Ohio State's just such a big school, there was probably like 1,000 majors. I was just like scrolling endlessly trying to figure out like, oh, like what do I see myself like being interested in? And I came across like neuroscience and like I know what neuroscience was, but I was like, oh, like I didn't know that that's something you could major in or like specialize in. And so I kind of did just a little bit of like background research into like what the neuroscience undergraduate program at Ohio State was like. And it just seemed, just like an amazing community, a huge like support staff. And it was just something different. I think that's what really like stood out to me. We didn't have any neuroscience classes in my at my high school. And I figure that since there's a lot of like intersection between like psychology and biology that and which is stuff that I do have like experience in from high school, I want to just take a shot and just see like if it would be something that I would be like interested in. And it's one of the decisions that I absolutely do not regret. I'm really like happy and proud to be like a neuroscience major. We have an amazing community here at Ohio State. There's I think one of the biggest things that has always like stood out to me about neuroscience is just that it's still like a field ripe for discovery. Like there's still a lot of stuff that we don't know. I guess in the grand spectrum of like science, it's still relatively like new science. So there's a lot that, a lot of questions that still need answers. Um, so that was like just really intriguing to me. And I think at Ohio State, with the neuroscience program that we have here, like there's just a ton of opportunities and resources that like my advisors and my professors have given me. So I've definitely have grown a lot and learned, way more than I ever anticipated about neuroscience. And I'm just really happy to always learn something new constantly.
And I suppose I'll give my answer too. So with kind of my story just in general, I think the biggest thing with me is how the impact of how the impact of your relationships with other people kind of really helps shape your future. And how I end up in neuroscience is very much another case of that. So the reason why I chose Wayne State is because we have a wonderful psychology program. It's actually very well known in the state. We have amazing faculty, amazing research, and it just seemed like a great place to be. It's also, only a 15-minute drive from my house, which made things even easier to kind of go to college and make that affordable as far as not needing to rent a room board and stuff. And I think that was one of the best decisions I could have made as far as my options for undergrad. And I actually really didn't know about the neuroscience field when I got into college. So sophomore year after COVID, I went to physics one class and this girl sat right in front of me. We got to chatting and she said, "I'm a neuroscience major. What are you?" And I told her I was a psych major. And she said, "Hey, I was thinking about that too, but this neuroscience major seems really awesome, especially with me on the pre-med path, because all the requirements kind of cover kind of the ground rounds for like med school acceptances and applications, things like that. And there's a lot of really interesting high-level electives that I really want to take. Maybe you should look into it." And I'm like, okay. Tabbed up, did the research, kind of ran the comparisons between psychology and neuroscience major, and I realized, you know what, this neuroscience seems to have a lot of what I like. As Rosine said, I really liked psychology back in high school, biology in high school, chemistry in high school, and I really started really liking those things even more in college. And so I eventually decided to go for the neuroscience route, and it was a great decision. I met so many people, I learned a lot, and I grew in so many different ways. So I couldn't be more honored to be a neuroscience major at Wayne State.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And I think that it's really interesting the ways that, neuroscience is kind of this blossoming field. And Alex, I know that you are interested in biochemistry and kind of like it seems like those like cellular and molecular levels. So it's interesting to see, Rosine, how you have kind of like your pre-med track versus Alex, who is really interested in the molecular and cellular like biochemistry aspects of neuroscience. And I think that's one of my favorite things about neuroscience is just kind of how interdisciplinary it is. So cool. And Rosine, are you from Ohio?
Yeah, I'm from Akron, Ohio.
Okay, cool. So it's nice you both could kind of stay in state and like know about your programs and stuff. And what was kind of like the size of your programs, like your neuroscience programs?
I think when I came in as a freshman, there was 300 like incoming like new neuroscience undergrads.
Mm.
I'm not sure about total. I think 12 to 1,300. I'm not sure just because like People graduate at different times, or sometimes people switch majors. But I know we have like a lot of people in a neuroscience undergrad program here at Ohio State.
And then for my account, actually funny story about this. So when I came in, I believe the neuroscience major was extremely new. I think when I came in at 2020, I think it was the major was about 1 years old, maybe very, very, very new major, but it seemed to be one that really, really resonated with a lot of Wayne State and kind of our own future objectives. So within about 3 or 4 years here, it actually came. I was talking to one of the deans over at Wayne State, and he said it was actually the third most popular major in the school, despite only being around for about 5, maybe 6 years. So it's a wonderful size. It's fastly growing. I think more people are getting interested in it by the day, but it's very new. So it's a very exciting place to be.
Yeah, definitely. And if I'm not mistaken, both of you started your college experiences during kind of the pandemic time. How did that impact kind of the beginning and your path within college?
Yeah, I from what I remembered, when I came in August of 2021, which seems like a lifetime ago now that I think about it. Um, it was, there was still a lot of like social distancing and like mask mandating. But what I praise a lot, like especially with my advisor for who runs like the neuroscience program, he did the best he could to try to like create events that would still like be able to connect us given what was going on. We had a lot of like socials, and I was still able to like meet new people, which I give a lot of credit to because I know like some like every school has had like different like mandates at the time. um and before like Ohio State and with my advisor, like we definitely tried our best to just like try to establish a community. That was something that he always talked about from day one and even to today, about just trying to connect people. And it was obviously harder, back then, but I felt like whether it was just like survey class or like some kind of like picnic or like cookout that he would plan, um, he did his best to just make sure that like we were meeting new people, making new friends, establishing new connections. And I think like that's had a long lasting impact for sure.
And then for my answer, so COVID was definitely kind of, well, it was certainly something that the world took notice of. And I think I did trickle down to everyone in different ways. So at Wayne State, I think we did a pretty good job at trying to keep people together. But I will say that it was kind of, I didn't meet that many people as far as the first year goes, because we were a wholly online campus for pretty much everything except a chemistry labs that kind of opened up and had to be in person. So I would say that, and also when it came to neuroscience major, that was actually that second year when I started meeting people, which is where that transition took place. But yeah, so I will say that COVID brought a bit of a mixed blessing. Yes, you weren't able to really get to meet a lot of our peers or get a lot of that peer-to-peer advice that's really important, especially in the pre-med path, which I used to be. Um, and of course making friends and things like that. But I will say it did kind of benefit us because it kind of let us kind of focus on our grades, kind of focus on a narrow line of things and ease our transition to simplify entering college. Before we started going on campus, seeing all clubs, orgs, opportunities, research, and kind of all the things that we might need to do as we move further on the college career. So it gave us a simpler start, but I will say that we did lose some peer-to-peer interactions that might have also been pretty helpful too. Wayne State did a great job with it, but there's really nothing that replaces the face-to-face communication. So that's kind of my
Mm.
answer for that one.
Sure, sure. Yeah, it's really interesting how COVID like impacted campuses and then also to hear kind of your different experiences and still like being able to find community. And I think that that's an interesting point, Alex, about how um it kind of does simplify your start into college because there are so many things that completely change from high school and everything as you get into college, and it can be kind of overwhelming in like a good way to decide on what exactly you focus on, and then you're kind of in charge of your schedule for the first time ever and like all the different routes you can go. um so that's really interesting. And to kind of shift into some of those activities that you all were able to start once COVID restrictions kind of lifted a little bit. Um, when did you all get into research, and what was kind of your reason for getting into research? What drew you to it? How did you find your lab? Those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think as I said for like my last answer, just kind of recognizing that neuroscience is such like a new field and there's like many different ways that you could go about it. Like there's like the cellular molecular route, but there's also like the behavioral route, and then there's also like the computational route. And there's countless like research labs here at Ohio State, just in general, but also like specifically for like neuroscience. And I remember just like I mentioned before that like I'm the only one in my family go to college, and like I had zero idea what it meant to be like a pre-med. I remember like we had a neuro survey class like the first week, and we had like this Excel sheet that like my advisor made, like basically outlining like, okay, like if you want to be like a competitive applicant for like medical school, like what do you need? And I just saw like like 500 volunteering hours, 100 shadowing hours, research, and I was like, oh my gosh, like what what is this? I had just zero idea like that was like what you like would recommend it or like need to be involved in. So I was, started looking into like some research labs, but I'm gonna be extremely transparent, but it was difficult for me. I think that I was still kind of I think it's because of COVID, just because like not being able to really like study effectively slash efficiently, and then transitioning into college level classes, which I learned the hard way that college classes are not like high school classes at all. So I can admit that I, failed a couple midterms here and there. And while I was just still trying my best to just, keep, stay happy, stay positive, and get like good grades, I would see like a bunch of like my friends or other people in the major like already getting involved in like volunteering and then like research as you mentioned. And it definitely, stressed me out. And I started off kind of just we have like this website called Undergraduate Research Postings, and they usually post like different like research positions. And originally, I wasn't like for research, I wasn't specifically looking at neuroscience. I was kind of in this mindset of I just want to get involved in anything that I can, just like to build up experience. And I got 3 interviews for like the like biomedical science field, and had the interviews, and they all said that like, oh, like you did great, and like we'll let you know by the end of the week if you got it or not. And then they just never responded to me, and that was definitely like I admit that was very disappointing and kind of demoralizing for me, just because again like I think just seeing everyone else like being involved in research, and like I was just like struggling at the time. I think like one of my biggest like weaknesses at the time was just like constantly comparing myself to other people. I just had a habit of doing that, and that's still something I'm still trying to improve right now. Um, but there was this one club that I used to be in called Buckeyes Against Alzheimer's. Um, and one of like the exec members, I talked to him about just like kind of my just struggles with like getting involved in research. And he mentioned, and this was just something that I never like really thought about, but like if you just go on like neuroscience like research labs and just cold email like all of them, and just obviously like just kind of like you want to do something that you're specifically interested slash passionate about, so whether it's like neurotrauma or like neuroinflammation or like all the different like categories, and then like do your like little research about like what the lab specifically studies, to just like email a bunch of them and kind of just see like who gets back to you. And I just remember sending like 20 to 30 emails, and eventually, like one lab took a chance on me, and that's the lab I'm in right now. And I've always kind of just been interested in like what happens after like you sustain like a concussion or like a traumatic brain injury. Like what does that do to your brain? Just because there's billions of neurons within the brain, and when one thing dies or like something goes wrong, I would assume that that has like a long lasting impact or like a domino effect on other uh like pathways. And that was kind of like what like my like the lab that I'm in right now like specifically studies with like neuro like immunology and neuroinflammation. And I I started, just doing like really simple stuff, just like washing dishes or like doing what my grad student's project was, simple like IHC. But I think over time, just like um, learning to be like an independent thinker and like understanding like how everything is connected, how like one like brain tissue, you can take that and make a graph or like do like PCR on it and kind of just like starting to learn like how everything is like interwoven. I think that's like one of my favorite parts of like my lab is just understanding that everything is connected like to like this bigger picture of like why we do what we do, as in research. Um, so it's been like that for the last I think 3 years, and I've just been really appreciative of that them taking a chance on me, especially when I was struggling to get involved, and I just don't have any regrets.
And then for kind of my answer, I have to echo Razine's sentiment. Getting into research is incredibly tricky at the undergrad level. So if people out there are having trouble, it's totally normal. And we've all kind of have had to try to break into the industry as well. So don't feel too bad about this. We've all been there and we've all done it. So how I broke into the industry was actually funny because we're doing Pal for Neurosci. So my chapter did a breaking into the research industry through with Neurosci event run by actually our president, who did fantastic as a presenter there. So, and she kind of said, cold emailing is really good, but if you get into a research program from university, that could be even better. So for me, and again, here's where the people kind of help guide your path thing that I kind of keep coming back to, is that my physics one professor ran this thing called the Richard Barber Interdisciplinary Program, where undergrads from Wayne State could apply in, and then labs from all around the Wayne State campus, at the med school, the pharmacy, undergrad college, anyone, anywhere could kind of say, I'm looking for people, I'm looking for funding. And so they, in exchange for taking two undergrads into their project, they were receiving funding from this program for their research. So I applied for that program. About 24 of us got selected into labs, and I got interviewed from all sorts of people. Funnily enough, both labs that I currently work for, I was interviewed with during that program. So again, that social network is amazingly impactful. So never, never underestimate the social networks here. So that's kind of how I broke into the industry. So I first explored organic chemistry. During my neuroscience major, I wanted to kind of pull back and learn more about the neuroscience stuff, which is where I work with Dr. Hilary Marusak, who's phenomenal in every single way, and doing like behavioral neuroscience and got involved with her postdoc, Claire Zendel, about air pollution, mental health, circuitry. I think that was fascinating. And then starting to see my interest in drug design, I came back to the Gavande lab in pharmacy to work on SARS-CoV-2, USB-13s, and I'm so grateful to join that lab as well. Um, and yeah, so bringing in the industry is incredibly difficult, but if you can interview with multiple people, get to know the faculty around, you tend to be able to find your way to find the interest you're looking for, and you also find great mentors to help you guide your decisions. I'd be so lost without the Grande Lab and the Think Lab. So I just could not be more grateful to get to know them, work with them, and for all the things they've done for me. I couldn't be more grateful.
Yeah, research is definitely tough to get into, and especially when there are so many labs who have, they can only take so many folks. That can definitely be tough. And I think that it's really cool what you were talking about, Rosina, about how like everything is connected. And the thing that I thought of was like how kind of your experiences leading up to like just even trying to find into a lab, like that is connected to kind of your bigger story of how you got into where you're at now and kind of all of the different experiences that you've had. And then yeah, Alex, you're, being able to connect with folks and kind of just apply to this program and interview and see kind of what is out there. Like that's really awesome. Was your president, was it Noor at the time or was it who was it, Miriam?
Yep, it was Mary Maboy, and then Celine was her amazing VP. Those two are
Yeah.
just a power team, so God bless them.
Yeah, they were really, really awesome folks. So that's really cool. And I think that it's also interesting too, Alex, that you got involved with SARS-CoV-2 with like, the COVID pandemic. Like that, I think is really interesting how you started during COVID and then like also ended up in a lab that's doing some drug discovery related to SARS-CoV.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the big reasons why I picked it because I just took Orgo 2 that previous winter. I was like, wow, organic chemistry is actually really fun. So being able to use organic chemistry to really heal a pandemic that's pretty much devastating the world right now, I was like, wow, this seems really awesome. So that's why I wanted to spend my summer with them, and then things kind of shifted, changed around, and then we found our way back too. So yeah, it was a really awesome experience for sure.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, and then that kind of like, I don't know, that whole idea of like when you are looking, especially with both of you being pre-med when you first started, and Alex, I know that you kind of shifted since then, but a little bit. And I was pre-med too, and I didn't join a lab until my senior year. And it was because I was at like a faculty dinner or something, and they were asking, there were two professors at my college who were married, and they were asking like about everybody's research, and I was the only one in the group who had never done research because I didn't even know that that was like a thing. Like I'm kind of first gen STEM of my family, and so I just had no clue what was out there. And then I was like, oh, maybe this is something that I need to do. And then kind of eventually found my way into a language and neuroimaging lab, which was so fun. But yeah, it can definitely take some time, and then just kind of like, I don't know, research can be really mystifying in some ways, but it's fun to see how it kind of demystifies over the course of getting to know people. So yeah. So what does a day in kind of your life look like? Whether that is in the lab or outside of the lab, what does that kind of look like for you all?
I'm glad you're asking this now because if you asked me last semester, I would just be saying studying for the MCAT 10 hours a day. Yeah, so definitely this semester is way easier. Just I only am taking three classes and they're all like GEs, so just trying to enjoy my time before I graduate. Right, I have I'm not a morning person, I can 100% admit that. So I have my schedule set up to where everything starts at 11 a.m. So I can get up around like 10, quick little breakfast, and then just get ready for the day. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays is when I go into like my research lab. So I'll start my day there. It was for this semester, it's kind of split where like half the time I'm working on like my grad student's project, and then the other half it's just the project that I worked on this past summer that the like neuroscience undergraduate research like funded me for. I finished like the experimental side of things during the summer, so now it's more about just like writing abstracts, like kind of fine tuning like my poster for like upcoming research presentations. Um, so that's like usually like what I do like in the lab. And usually when I get out of lab on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, Mondays I volunteer at hospice, which has been just a massive impact. It's definitely changed kind of my perspective of healthcare and has pushed me to further want to pursue a career in healthcare. Um, and then on the other days, just mentioned how like I just want to spend more time like doing what I want to do and like doing things that are like fun on my terms. But just because last semester I was just stuck, studying for the MCAT. I stay involved in like all the clubs that I'm in, and like some like the leadership positions I'm in. So just like going to meetings and like hosting events for other like undergrads in within like our community. It's definitely been a lot of like a full circle moments, like what I like to call it, because like a lot of these clubs that I'm like in, I was in since freshman year, it just as like a regular member, and then now like being in like a leadership position where I'm teaching like the freshmen, like showing them like opportunities and giving them resources. Like it reminds me of just like how far I've came, and in the last 3.5 years, and how much I think I've grown up a lot. So it's just been like this semester. I know I'm graduating in like 6 weeks, which is crazy, but um, just trying to just do everything I can just to make the most out of my time here. Just meet still like constantly just meeting new people, talking to new people, and just doing things that just make me happy. That's I would say like it's my day to day right now.
And just kind of segueing off of Zine's answer. So what's fun about this kind of the two people that you kind of pick is that you have someone at the end of the undergrad and there's someone who's about to go into a PhD program. So I'm kind of on the other side of that giant line called graduation. Very fun stuff. So Um, so ever since I graduated, I kind of jumped right into everything. I just started teaching as an instructional assistant pretty much a week after I graduated. So in addition to that, writing up my med school apps because I was still pre-med at that point. And just kind of dealing with all and still keeping up with our research in two different labs was definitely a challenge, I will say. And it really tested my time management skills, but I think I managed to get through it all right, plus or minus. I remember a lot of times I was like staying up late just trying to like make some worksheets for the students or something like that, just some little extra things to help them out. So definitely was working quite a bit. That's kind of settled down as we kind of came into the fall after that semester ended. Still working in two research labs, and I work at the chemistry lab quite a bit more nowadays, just because I'm starting to get a lot more projects, and chemistry just takes a lot of time. 'Cause sometimes reactions take 2 days, and the workups can probably take you a full day, depending on like what you gotta do to get that pure 98% pure product. So I will say that's kind of taking up a lot of my time. And then in the weekends, I tend to do my psych lab data analysis, where I'm currently working on like a project about how like peer victimization kind of affects mental health. So it's a very exciting project that I'm slowly doing the SPSS for. Um, and then also just kind of looking into grad schools as well. So that is, I will tell you, that it's been kind of the biggest thing for me recently. And don't underestimate how much time this is going to take. Going on visits for weekends will take you quite a bit of time, and just kind of deciding everything just takes a lot of time, comparing your options with all this different stuff. So up until like last week, I was very much in that trying to make a school decision on grad school time frame, and think I've finally made one. And we're still kind of, and now I'm starting to jump into looking at housing and all the next steps. So it's definitely a busy existence for me right now, but there's just a lot of things opening up, and honestly, it's quite an exciting time for me.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to share what you're gonna, what program you're selecting or where you're going?
Sure, yeah, yeah. So I haven't sent out like all the emails to kind of close out all the loops yet, but I have just accepted an offer to Notre Dame's biochemistry PhD program.
Nice.
Yeah, very excited. So, and they have a lot of like drug discovery stuff, and I think that'll be phenomenal for me. And then as I move into like the postdoc and then into the academic world, I would start moving back into neuroscience for like psychiatric neurodegenerative disorders is kind of where I'm starting to do the drug discovery for. So yeah, it's a really great start. I'm very excited. I am very sad to leave Wayne State behind because I just built such a community there and I really love everyone there. So it really breaks my heart to leave them. But I'll be coming to visit often, and yeah, I just gotta see how this is gonna go. I'm very excited though. Very excited for future
Yeah.
ambitions.
Yeah, congratulations. It's
Thank you.
definitely that is really awesome. And I definitely understand the whole like leaving the state that, you kind of made community at. I very much relate to that. I went to school in Arizona. I'm from Virginia, and that was like really tough for me when I left. But also it's like, I don't know, it's really cool to like go on to the next thing, kind of like, and then you can always call back to your undergraduate folks and the folks that, really mentored you. And that is also really fun and awesome.
Congrats, Alex. That's an awesome program. So really proud of you.
Thank you so much. Trust me, it's all due to the mentors that guided my path. So I owe so much to them, more than you'll know.
Yeah, so kind of I think that that might be a good lead in into what are some things that you have really valued about the mentorship that your PIs have given you, and how has that kind of impacted you throughout your experience in the lab, outside of the lab?
Yeah, I think when I think of my PI, like the first thing that like I really appreciate and respect about him is just like raw transparency. I think that like they, as like a mentor, they're extremely busy doing their own thing, but they also understand that like having undergrads in their lab is an investment because it does help, make things run a little bit more faster slash more efficient. Um, I think that like in the beginning, like I mentioned how like I was kind of just doing what I was told and maybe being a bit confused about why I was doing what I was doing. And then it was only, after I started, kind of just thinking outside the box a bit and like working independently when I started realizing like how like things are like all like interwoven like with one another. And I think like what I always like appreciate is just like honesty. Just like if I'm doing something wrong, I want someone to not sugarcoat anything. I want them to be straight with me about like okay, you're doing it, this way, which is not the correct way. You should be doing it this way. Because I think like, it's important to learn from those mistakes, like no one's perfect. And I can admit that like I've fallen slash failed millions of times, but I think what's important is just like having someone to kind of like guide you in the right direction, saying like, hey, like if you do it this way, like this is how you're gonna like yield better results. So I just really appreciate how like at the end of the day, like like any type of like criticism or any type of advice, like it's all about just trying to improve me as a researcher, but also like as a person. Um, I think that like it's fine if, during like the first couple of weeks, like if they're gonna like hold your hand and like kind of tell you like everything that like you need to do, but there is like an expectation that like by the end of this that like you should be able to critically think for yourself and you should be able to like answer those questions like why are we doing what we're doing and like being able to like answer that like by myself. And I think like that just helps me just like have more integrity like with what I do. So that's something I really appreciate about my PI for sure.
All right, and then I'll give my answer for this. So actually kind of back off what Rosine said, the first thing I'll say is the mentorship is gonna, the types of mentors that you might find in your research labs are gonna vary pretty widely. So some people are more on the harsher critic side, while some are the more gentle support side. Some are like heavily involved in you, your research, your future ambitions, things like that, and some are just kind of just want to keep it professional and keep it to the research. So when you're looking for research labs and things like that, knowing kind of where you want your PI to be is pretty important because I've seen a lot of different cultures as far as different lab cultures and different types of mentoring styles. So for me, I kind of like more of the gentler mentorship, things like that. Someone who kind of always keeps you lifted up, but is not afraid to like say, "Hey, I think we might want to try this angle first." And I think that that's in finding like the support that really works for you is pretty much, in my opinion, essential to your success as a researcher. So I couldn't be more blessed with Dr. Gavande and Dr. Marisak's labs. Clara, Reza, and everyone who's I've worked with in those labs has been phenomenal people to work for and phenomenal people to work alongside. So I couldn't be more blessed to have them. But I would say that one of the biggest things for me is that both labs have been really great with like out of lab support as well. So especially with me going through, oh, I should probably mention this. I'm actually a first gen. Both my parents did do bachelor's degrees, but anything beyond a master's is foreign land to my family. So I really need a lot of support with like med schools, grad schools, and things like that. Because I just did not know a thing about it. So having like, Dr. Gavande, Hillary, Clara, everyone kind of coming and say, hey, we're here for you. Do you have any questions? And just do like a periodic checkup to see like how I'm doing, any questions come up, and helping me guide my decisions and what things I should look out for, things I should think of, things I should lean towards. It couldn't have come at a better time, and I couldn't be more thankful that they took so much time out of their days to really help me out going forward. So mentorship is critical. It really helps out so much, and finding the right people it just makes everything so much better.
Yeah, definitely. I've been having a lot of kind of these like mentorship conversations in some of our recent interviews, and somebody that I talked to, Dr. Ashley Fricks Gleason, she talked about kind of these different mentor styles and how finding what works for you is really going to be, super critical to the ways that you feel safe in the lab or feel like you can fail and still be supported and like those kinds of things. So that's really cool that you both have been in your labs for a long time. So being able to like build that relationship and learn about mentorship styles that work for you and also kind of the different ways of support is really cool. Um, awesome. So what would you say has been the most exciting part about researching or like, and it can be about researching as a process or about like a specific lab result that you got in your research? What has been kind of the most exciting thing for you so far?
I think this might be a little cliche, but it's like when you're doing like a experiment slash project that takes like months and then you finally get like a result. I think regardless, like I mean it would be preferable if it's like a great result, but just like kind of just seeing the fruits of your labor, from like I just mentioned how like everything is like connected. So from like taking that first like brain tissue all the way to like the final like representative image that you put on like a research poster. Um, I think like that was something because with my project, like that was like my first ever like independent project that I was able to work on like on my own during the summer. And again, like just starting off, I was just doing like little bits and pieces of certain things and not really understanding like the full story. But then like when I finished all the experiments and started actually doing like the more like technical like design stuff, like making like the poster and just seeing it like all come together, it is like extremely satisfying. I like I'm just someone too where like when it comes to like my posters, like everything has to be aligned and like symmetrical and like it's so annoying like because I don't know like what Alex said like you've made posters like what programs you use, but I just use PowerPoint and just like if it's like even a little bit off like aligned, it bothers me so much. But like when you do like get it aligned, like not like only like literally, but also just like as the entire project has like comes together as a whole, it is extremely rewarding, and it's something that like it's after months of just doing all this work to be able to kind of just show it to other people and kind of just present and talk about what you found, like what you think this means like for future directions and like how this applies to like the bigger field of neuroscience and medicine and et cetera. I think that's been extremely rewarding and satisfying. That's something that honestly I didn't really feel or understand until I was given this grant to do this project over this past summer. But like having this feeling now, like especially like with my journey at in this research lab comes to an end, I think it's very appropriate, and I'm very happy for that.
And to kind of throw my answer in the pile, honestly, I'm. Oh, just so you know, I do use PowerPoint for my posters. Uh, But I'd say like the most exciting things about research for me is kind of twofold. The question of what's going on here, and also the chance to like discuss and kind of teach my research to other people, because that's kind of one of my biggest focuses. So I'll start with the first question. What's going on here? So a lot of my studies, we're trying to link air pollution to alterations in neurocognitivity and therefore mental health is one of the big projects I was working on up to this point. And we have some papers in the work, so very excited about that. Um, and so there's been so much literature about how air pollution affects mental health, but when in our studies, we just kind of had trouble trying to find that link super well. The how air pollution affects neurocognitivity has been pretty much decisively seen in our data, and the p-values are fabulous. But trying to find that link has been such a tricky thing. So that's where my own quote unquote independent project kind of took place, where I try to look rather than just like the mental health sums and things like that on the surveys, trying to go based off of like the symptom subscales, like what's like a rumination, overthinking, things like that. Trying to like see, is it just like the symptoms are kind of the signs of the aberrant connectivity causing air pollution? Could that have been the answer we're looking for? So that's kind of like so kind of just kind of taking it back and just think about what's going on here? How should we think about this? Because maybe it's trying to twist your thinking to really understand what the truth of the matter really is something I really like. And also just like talking about the research. So when I was on the path study, I was kind of on the Zoom with like one of my supervisors, just kind of talking about like how we should analyze the data and how we should think about this stuff. And it was really fun to like see all the questions we can come up with, how are we going to answer the questions, and like how are we going to analyze our data, and what things are we going to use and what covariates and things like that. It's just kind of fun to like get into the logistics. And also presenting is also a blast. So I don't know if anyone's done a post presentation on the audience, but it's very fun to talk to people who are more senior than you in your research, teach them about what you're doing, and ask them, hey, what do you think about this? Is there anything that you might think of that might help me kind of solve a roadblock that's been an issue in my research? Or what do you think about these methods? Do you think there's something else I should think about? And those conversations have been really awesome. And plus, I really like teaching, so doing posters and oral presentations, things like that, it's always a blast to do. So I would say, yeah, just like talking about what's going on, think about the methodology and how we'll tackle a question, and then presenting and teaching research is just a blast.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, both of those are really cool. Kind of that like finding the story and like seeing that process come to fruition is really cool. And then also that part of being able to like collaborate and see like what's the link here that we're missing, or like what's this like just kind of it's almost all about like perspective. Like what perspective are you taking on what you're looking at? So that's really fun. And I also love teaching, so I totally understand that part. And then to also like get feedback from other folks that you're teaching to and seeing like what their perspective is and then how they think about things different than you do, either based on their experience or their current research is really awesome and fun. Um, so kind of since we're talking about posters, um, what is kind of your process for putting together a poster and preparing to present to somebody else?
Yeah, I for me, I take notes on just everything. I definitely win the award for the most messiest handwriting of all time. So if I showed you my iPad with all my notes, you would have zero idea what what I'm saying. But like I just think like I mentioned like with the project like being independent, like it's I have my interpretation slash vision of like what I think, this means, like what I found, like what the story is. And I always, I have a close relationship with like my grad student and my PI. So like I always, reach out to them, plan meetings with them and just kind of just explain to them, okay, like, this is what I think, but like, is this correct? And then like, what do you think? So it can kind of just like bouncing ideas off of one another is key. I like what Alex said about like when you're talking to someone who's like in a senior position compared to you, like there's like they obviously know much more than you, but also like you're doing something that's like new because it's your own project. So kind of like this trade-off of knowledge, I think is really beautiful. So just like taking notes about like every single little thing. I just mentioned the whole like making sure everything's aligned. Like I'll after I take notes like from like a session with like my grad student or my PI, I'll immediately just like, well, it's still like fresh in my mind, like just like open up the PowerPoint and just start making adjustments right then and there. I do what I find that's like really helpful is just like taking a screenshot of like my of the PowerPoint off my laptop and then uploading it to like Notability because like I have an Apple Pencil, so then like being able to just draw. I'm a very visual person, so just being able to like put the words to the pictures I find that, super helpful. Um, just taking notes and just being aware of this, like every single little detail because details matter. I realize like when there's so much going on in the poster, like if I forget like one period or one comma, that's gonna bother me. So it's just like stuff like that. Like I just want to make sure like there's a lot of like attention to detail involved in pretty much everything. And you'll be surprised that as much as you pay attention to, like when you print out the poster, I print it out and I see something that I should have fixed, and well, it's too late now. Um, but just always just getting feedback from like my mentors is a huge part, just like the poster writing process for me. Um, just being able to just understand like again, like I might understand from one perspective, but like they can give me a completely different angle that just makes it like way more sense. I think that's just like super important. And then when in terms of just like preparing for like giving like a poster talk or a poster presentation, I prior to like the past like summer, I've never given like a talk before. And I would say like I like talking to people, but it's different when it's in like a science perspective and you're presenting like your work and your data. It's different. But I think that like what really kind of helps me just get better is kind of just like dismissing what I just said about how like it's a science conversation. I think that if you make it I don't want to say simple, but make it accessible to who you're talking to. Because I think that, every poster symposium you go to might be different. Maybe you're presenting to just undergrads, maybe you're presenting to other experts in the field. But trying to understand that like you are the expert in your project and maybe like they're not. So like being confident and trying to use, simple English, simple language, and just making things transparent and like so they can understand it, I think was something that like really helped me because I think in the beginning I was using just so much jargon, so much like I thought that I had to use the big words, to make it feel like I know what I'm talking about. But then I don't know what I'm talking about, then they don't know what I'm talking about, so it doesn't help anyone. Um, so just like keeping it simple and keeping it very um not I wouldn't say casual, but just relaxed. I think, I think being relaxed is key to being confident. And so I think that, I this like past poster presentation that I did, like I definitely made those adjustments from like the first one. I just mentioned just always like constantly learning from my mistakes and just seeing like what I can improve and do better next time. Um, I think that's my process for just for like making a poster than like talking, like doing like poster talks. Yeah.
And then I'll kind of throw my answer into the ring. So my process for making posters, I think the number one thing is know your research and be as well read as you can about the field. So, and I gotta say, making a poster is tricky because you really want to inform people about all the details and nuances of your research, but also to keep it simple and understandable. That is a complex challenge. So if you guys are having trouble with that, that is completely normal, and trust me, I've been there too. So I would say that when kind of like preparing for making posters and things like that, trying to know like what should I tell people? What do people want to know the research? So, for example, like my own air pollution research. So obviously they would want to know how the air pollution is collected, what mental health screens am I using, and like kind of how the neurocognitivity is going to go. Is it resting state? Is it functional? Is it functional MRI? Is it an anatomical? Is it gray matter mass? Things like that. Knowing exactly kind of what things to focus on is really great. But I'd say like presenting the research, I kind of like what Rosine said about it just being more of a casual interaction because poster sessions are extremely relaxed from what I've seen. So, and having some teaching experience really does kind of help kind of conquer the stage fright because that is a real thing too, and I struggle with that myself. And also just how to communicate an idea to a person. So I've had about 6 semesters worth of teaching experience myself, so I gotta say it takes some adjustment from field to field, but you do feel a lot more confident the more that you do it. And it kind of helped that my first poster presentation, I was right next to my postdoc who was doing the same study. So that was extremely helpful. Um, and I don't know, just like doing the little things to make you feel comfortable on stage is something super important. And knowing your research really does help you kind of provide that foundation to really give you the confidence to talk and feel good in it. And also, just as a note, I also have awful handwriting, so I use my computer typing for typing out my posters and drafting things. Oh, that's something else I wanted to mention. Figures. Figures are super fun to design. So in trying to figure out how to take a complex idea and put it into an image format is really interesting. And don't be afraid to break the mold a little bit. Always look at research papers to see like what you can find, but the functional connectivity data, it was hard for me to find some good stuff. So being creative and trying to figure out how do I want to show this in a way that's understandable is actually very rewarding. I think it's very fun, especially if you're an artistic type like I am.
Nice. Yeah. That's really interesting to hear kind of like your two processes and yeah, that's really cool. And I agree, the like putting information into visuals, that's kind of like that's the thing that like scratches my brain. Because it's just like really cool to be like when you finally get it, it's like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Um, awesome. Well, that is very, very cool. And that's really exciting that you're kind of like coming full circle, Rosine, with like now you're feeling more confident with your project and like kind of getting more into that like relaxed casual stage. Because yeah, like I feel like when you are like first starting out and like presenting, you're like, oh my gosh, I need it to be like this super high level, like very professional, very stoic or however kind of way. And then it's like you're just talking to people, you know? Um, you're just gonna breathe and like settle into the moment and everything will be fine. Um, so with kind of our last few minutes before we take a short break and kind of open it up a little bit more, What advice do you have for new neuroscientists, whether they're just looking to get into neuroscience or whether they're starting to get into research and want to get their feet wet in that way? Yeah.
I think the it's two things. One is always believe in yourself, and then two is just that like everything takes time. I think like looking like now it's hindsight now, like looking back at like who I was as a freshman and like seeing who am now, it's easy to be like, oh, like, with time, everything was gonna work out. Like it's true, but also like when I was a freshman, I was lost, confused, just I think I struggled with kind of just like finding direction and then I mentioned about like constantly comparing myself to other people. Um, it was it was just like a super like rough process and time for me. Um, and I can admit like there were times when like I thought I wasn't gonna make it. Just being just very honest about that. Like I thought I was gonna like I wasn't cut out for pre-med or even neuroscience. I was gonna have to switch my major or something like that. Um, but I think just like having strong foundational values and then just also just a strong support system. Like I always talk to my mom and dad about everything and they always, believe in me and love me and that's what motivates me and pushes me every day. And also just like my friends as well, and I think, it's what's the saying? Like it's a marathon, not a sprint. I realize that every single successful person in the world had to start somewhere. And it wasn't just like they're making giant leaps slash accomplishments every other day. You have to do very small things every day and they will add up. I think that's something that like back then I didn't realize, but now like looking back, like I am surprised like of how much I've grown up. I realized that like it took time and just a lot of trust in myself and having others trust me. So just I would say, again, like always believe in yourself. Always know that like with time, it might everyone's different, it might take days, weeks, months, years, but knowing that like because everyone's different, everyone takes their own path. It's which is why you should easier said than done, but like why you shouldn't compare yourself to other people. I think that once you kind of break through that mold and just focus on yourself and do what's best for you, because you know yourself better than everyone else. You know what it takes to make yourself be successful and happy. I think that's what kind of I think around junior year when I started realizing that, and I think that's just made me a better and more happier person at the end of it. So just trusting the process, knowing that it takes time, but in the end it will like work and pay off.
And then just kind of follow up on Rosene's points. And honestly, they are fantastic points. Again, like trusting yourself and again, taking it day by day, because taking it day by day to kind of see the growth later on is completely true. Like for me, I didn't really have that much going on until I started like senior year. This is where I started kind of popping up with like presentations, posters, research, things moving along. And that was after I was in the lab for about 2 years now. So I will say that if people are kind of feeling a bit worried that they're not getting quote unquote far enough with their things, don't worry, it does take time. As long as you're working toward that objective, you will make it. I can guarantee that. So, as far as my advice with like things going forward, I would say follow your heart and make acquaintances or make allies. So, following your heart is kind of a thing that I've been doing a lot of ever since I kind of left undergrad or as I was leaning toward undergrad. Because again, I was pre-med up until like, I don't know, like 7, 8 months ago. So this is a very new transition. And that's because I kind of stuck to me saying went in to undergrad as a pre-med. I want to kind of see us through. I know it's gonna be hard, but I'm gonna make it through. But over time, you might start, some people do start to realize that you're kind of dragging your feet when doing the MCAT studying or dragging your feet when it comes to those applications and things like that. And while having those difficulties and those points are completely normal, if you also find that you're finding a shine to research and things like that, it might be a good sign to also try to explore other options and see if there's a better fit for you. Because when we come out of high school, pre-med kinds of be the only like STEM option that we're kind of presented with. But as you go forward, you'll find there are more. So I would, and when I followed my heart to Orgo 2, when I realized I really love that subject, and then I just kind of kept going further and further, going into chemistry research, taking neurobiology courses, advancing further into biochemistry. And I realized I really like the field of biochemistry and organic chemistry. in addition to neuroscience. So I want to kind of go off to a career that might do that precise thing and then work in the neuroscience and drug discoveries and find my roots again there. So I would say following your heart and trying to, recognizing when times are rough, but also when there are other op doors that you open that you want to go into. Trust your gut, you'll find the right path for yourself. And then making friends. Again, my story is all about how people have kind of come to my life and really has pretty much opened doors and changed my life all for the better. And I couldn't be grateful for meeting every single one of them. And without them, I wouldn't have become a neuroscience major. I wouldn't have been on this PhD route. It wouldn't have been in these research labs. I wouldn't have really found any of the success I've had if I didn't let people into my life and try to learn from them as best I can and give back as best I can and let them kind of take me and help me find the passions of where I'm meant to be. So follow your heart and meet people because odds are they'll help you find where you're meant to go.
Yeah, that's really awesome. It's really cool because like I don't know, I feel like especially going in as pre-med and then just like going into undergrad in general can be so like scary. And um especially in kind of very high achieving fields, it can be like, oh, I need to do X, Y, and Z, or else I'm not enough. And that like thing of comparing yourself to other people when there is actually space for everybody. And like, um, there's space for all of these perspectives and all of this, like, that can lead into like more collaborative work versus like, oh, we're against each other in this, or like, I have to be where they are. But like your paths are different, and that can just kind of change how you move through it. And you are going to get through it. And I think that time thing is like a really big one because everything takes so much longer than you think it's going to take, no matter what it is. And no matter what, you will get through it. And um, one of somebody who mentored me, they always told me, like, slow down to speed up. So, like, just take your time and like you will get there and it'll be like really awesome once you do get there. But you gotta take it day by day. um so yeah, that's really awesome. And then the whole aspect about, other people and how they can completely influence your journey. Like I know that I wouldn't be in my position without the people who influenced me. And so that is, I totally co-sign that. I co-sign everything that you all just said, because I think that those are such important points. So yeah, thank you so much. And we will conclude the live portion here. And then kind of take a quick little refresh break, and then kind of jump into opening it up more. But before we do that, is there anything that you all would like to close with?
I had actually had a quick question for Al.
Yeah.
Um, so I know you mentioned that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but that you started off pre-med and then you said like 7, 8 months ago was when you kind of like transitioned over to like to pre-PhD. Um, I know you explained a bit, but I was wondering like if you could go a little bit more in depth about like was it like a specific thing that happened that immediately like changed your trajectory, or was it like a culmination of like multiple things? Because I know like a couple of people who like were pre-med and they switched to like pre-PhD, and they all like tell me different like reasons to why they did it, and I think it's important like to kind of hear like someone else's perspective of like why like they changed to pre-PhD.
Ooh, good question. And
That is a
yes,
good question.
yeah, it's I mean, how much time do I have to answer this question?
However much you want.
Oh boy, it's can be a pretty long story, but I'll keep it kind of shorter, and if we want to go more into it in the breakout session, we can do that. So I would say when I was kind of getting through junior year, I kind of realized that, pretty much just I wasn't really sure about it. And once in what and it comes to junior year, that's when you start applying, take your MCAT, you really start getting into high gear for the application. So I saw a lot of my like peers in physiology and stuff saying like, "Oh my God, here it comes. I'm excited. Let's do this." But when things started getting more and more serious, I became a lot more hesitant myself, saying, "Wait a second." something doesn't quite feel right. So a bit of a nagging doubt kind of started showing up. So now I'd say that it kind of kept going as I move in time, and research tended taking more of a shine to me. I was finding a lot more opportunities in research. I was seeing some things I really wanted to see and investigate more in research. So it was a slow shift over to research because I saw more opportunities for myself there. Also recognizing that I'm a bit more of an introvert. And so in medicine, you are talking to patients all day. So, and I think I would feel fulfilled in that role. I will say I would definitely be drained in that role as well. So, and there was one other thing. Oh yeah, experiences. Experiences are kind of the biggest thing that kind of tipped me over the edge, from one path to another. So I had a really fortunate opportunity to scribe at my local hospital in the emergency center. And I would say that it's really awesome to see how doctors day to day can provide care to their patients, especially those who are critically in trouble. I mean, I also had a patient one time that like inhaled chlorine gas, for example. So yeah, um, very interesting how the doctors approach their problems and problem solve their way through it to give them the care they needed. But for me, it just wasn't an environment that I felt I was great. I would just was the most comfortable in. I was much more comfortable in the research lab, working with small groups of people trying to solve different problems that have interest to all of us. So, and then also when my advisor said, "Hey, why don't you go for a PhD?" I was like, "Hmm, and then you just kind of think it over a little bit and you're like, okay, maybe I'm more of an introverted person. Maybe, pre-med hasn't been something that I've had an extreme amount of passion for at this point in my life. Maybe later it'll change, who knows? Um, and I just think that, and there's a lot of things that I'm starting to see that I'm thinking, wait, this could be really awesome. So, given all those, a lot of factors, these are just a few. But those are three big things. So it's like maybe this PhD route might be a solider route for me, especially because I love the science a lot. That was another huge thing. And because I love the science a lot, I wanted to do work a lot more in the science. That shift to PhD felt a lot more natural, and I think I'm really happy with it at the moment. So, of course, life, you never know where it's going to take you, but right now I think I'm pretty confident in where I'm going to go next.
Yeah, I really appreciate that answer because I think like that just shows that like I think sometimes people tend to like tunnel vision themselves and it's like, okay, if I'm pre-med, I need to stay pre-med no matter what. So like the fact that you switched only, 7, 8 months ago and that's a decision that you're happy and you're content with, like that's a huge deal. So like I'm glad that you're able to like do what was best for yourself.
Yeah, and I will say that a pre-med route is pretty rough. So if you are going through a rough patch, don't think of it immediately as a sign that you should switch. So definitely kind of weigh your options there. But if that is your feeling, start exploring and start getting into other opportunities, like going to the hospice care like you work in. That really revolutionized how you thought about medicine. And sometimes those new experiences might really invigorate that passion that you've been looking for medicine, which will help you force through that personal statement, those applications, and really kind of live that physician life that you're looking for. But, if there's other opportunities that are really calling to you, in essence, in the ones in the medical professions aren't as much, maybe taking a sign to either take a step back or think about other career paths could be really good for you. It all depends on what you're thinking.
Yeah, I think that that's a really important point. And then I think that you said something in your answer too about like maybe, I'll pursue medicine later. Like that is always an option, like you can start on one track and then, later on you find that you love something else or you just want to shift gears into something else. And that is never off the table. I think is like a really important point. And then same thing the other way. If you go to med school first, you can always go into scholarly work or research or anything like that later or combine them if however your passions end up. So I think that those are really important points. And Rosine, I think that that was like a really great question too. All right, cool. Well, I will go ahead and